This is the Darcy Giroux Podcast, episode 55. Today, my guest is Michael Harris. He is the Libertarian candidate for the Battle-River Crowfoot by-election, and today we're talking about liberty. Michael Harris, welcome to the Darcy Giroux Podcast. How are things?
It's going good. Thank you for inviting me out here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we met, I don't know, was it last winter? Was
It
it
was in December, I believe. That's
in
when
December?
Jacques came to Calgary.
Yeah, Jacques Boudreau was in town. We had a little kind of pub night with him. I think he'd done a talk at the University of Lethbridge also at the time. So, yeah, no, that's awesome. So I was now were you well, actually, before we get too much into it, let's do a. Why don't you introduce yourself? Like, tell us a bit about yourself and what you're up to right now.
So, my name is Michael Harris. I'm assuming most people in this podcast probably already know, but I'm running for the Libertarian nomination bid for Battle-River Crowfoot. I'm running against some pretty big names in this riding, Poilievre being among them. And the main idea is we're trying to bring Liberty and Alberta onto the ballot because a lot of these other candidates that are running, they're not wanting to support lowering taxes. They don't want to fight against supply management or equalization. And I want to make sure there's an option for people and to elevate their voices onto a national level.
Yeah, right on, right on. Where are you from? Where do you live?
I currently am based here in Calgary because I study here for the University of Calgary. I'm trying to get my PhD in political science. So I think I
Okay.
might be in Calgary for a decent amount of time here.
Yeah,
But
and
family's from Drumheller originally.
okay, so this you're running in your home riding, really?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic, fantastic. And you grew up there in Drumheller?
Unfortunately, I spent most of my life outside of Drumheller. The first one in since probably like since 1905 to probably out of Drumheller. Uh, when my father married my mom, they moved to Comox originally. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
actually in British Columbia for the first 10 or so years of my life. And then now I'm
Yeah.
here back in Alberta.
Well, okay. Well, Comox is a beautiful place, so
Yeah.
we won't hold it against you. What brought you into? So you're studying political science. Like,
Yeah.
you're obviously a young guy. I don't know. I don't know why
Maybe
you would
guess.
do that to yourself. Why don't you? Why don't you tell us?
Well, like why I'm in the degree that I'm in or why am I in
Yeah. Well, I
politics?
guess a bit about both. I'm interested to know. Like, first of all, you're studying political science.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have some interest in the subject. You're
Yeah.
running for the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
My homeboys, the Libertarian Party. So yeah, I'm curious. Like, what was your political journey?
Yeah.
To get you to this point.
Well, it's a bit of a longer story. I'll try to short it down as much as I can. So, even though I lived in Comox, both my family in Drumheller and in Comox were ranchers, or people who owned land and worked on that land for as much as they could. Predominantly, cows and horses were their two main areas they focused on. Now, when I was born in Comox, we owned a horse slash cow farm up in, I don't know, like the northern area of Comox. And the government, if anybody knows anything about Vancouver Island, it's all rock. Like if anybody's ever been there, if you try to build something, you're going to be hitting rock as soon as you hit the ground. But
Mhm.
Comox is different. It's the only area on Vancouver Island that's straight flat. And then if you dig anywhere down, it's all dirt. So most people wanted to develop that land. But the people who lived on that land were ranchers. And so the government and developers wanted to buy out that land to build suburbs, high rises. They wanted to take that land to be able to build what they wanted to build. And if people wanted to sell that land, I wouldn't have had an issue. Like at the end of the day, that's people's personal choices if they wanted to move on and develop that land. However, the government did a lot of sneaky things to try to kick people off their land to be able to take it over. One of them was enacted before I was even born federally, which is supply management, which limits the production of milk. But a lot of other things like limiting who you could sell to. where you could sell to. Suddenly, we couldn't sell to a grocery store anymore. If you had milk, can't go to a grocery store or your local general store. You had to sell on the side of the road, and if you don't, you get fined. If you want to be able to sell it outside of your province, well, now you got tariffs, taxes. There's actually going to be restrictions if you actually want to take it outside of the island. And that forced a lot of people off their land to have to sell their land to build those original suburbs that the government wanted to build. And that kind of pissed me off because not only did my family ended up also losing their land in Comox, but more than 20,000 people who also lived in Comox lost their land. And that happened because of government intervention into the economy. And most people didn't want to move, and they were forced to.
Mm-hmm.
That got me
Yeah.
into, first of all, that got me into libertarianism, number one, because I believe in personal choice, like full send. If people want to sell their land, then that's on them. But no time should they be forced by like gunpoint to say, this is how you're going to live your life. This is how you should, manage your own land.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a terrible, disgusting thing that they do when, through expropriation and then policies like supply management, where they, it infers some level of ownership outside of the individual, like to something like the state, right? Where
Yeah.
they are actually, look, they actually own this thing. We're going to tell you what you can and can't do with it. You're just some sort of, it's like a
Yeah.
feudalist system, you're a
Yeah.
feudal landholder basically, right? So that's interesting. Like that's an interesting thing about the supply management policy that sometimes gets overlooked in that argument
Yeah.
where it's there are all kinds of other consequences of it other than we're paying too much for dairy, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been going around this riding for the last, I'd say, about 3 months, and I was talking to young farmers, and if you're a big farmer, then supply management doesn't really affect you too much. You can survive the quota. But there's
Well,
some people
I
that
hold
only
on.
own.
Hold
Hold
on.
on.
That it actually benefits them more
Yeah.
than anything,
Yeah.
right?
So that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
They are usually the gangsters who are
Yeah. That's why I say in my campaign that it's a bit of a
yeah,
cartel. But that's what I'm just trying to
yeah,
say though. If you're a young farmer, if you only own like a couple of acres of land, you're screwed. Like
yeah,
like I said, like I don't want. I'm not trying to support supply management, but if you're a bigger farmer, yeah, you could probably survive it. But there's all these younger people that are trying to move out of the city, buy these buy the land that they're selling off all this ground land. If you're trying to ranch on that land or try to actually make a living, it's almost impossible nowadays with supply management.
yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. Um, and so I guess I'm curious though too, how much of that so if we're talking about your experience there as a kid in Comox, like so supply management had a big impact,
Oh,
but
$100%.
how much of that land would have been like directly expropriated or kind of rezoned for redevelopment where they were do you have any idea?
If you're talking about downtown Comox and like the predominantly like they say the southern area where most people lived, almost 100%. There's only one farm
Right.
left that's in the town. If you go into Courtney and like the Cumberland area, there's still some people who live near the mountains. Anything near the coast is all gone.
Right. Okay. Yeah, crazy. I don't it's been a while since I've been down there myself,
Yeah.
but probably at least 15 years or something, but
When I was born, the town had like 20,000 people. Now it's almost 60,000. Like it's almost tripled in population.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Um, okay, so let's talk about your own like so there was things like that that brought you to libertarianism.
yeah.
Let's talk about well maybe your personal what is your personal definition of libertarianism?
Well, I mean, it says also in my campaign that it's my idea that every single person in the world is a king. They should be able to control their own life, complete volunteerism. You are an adult. You should be able to control your life. You know how to spend your money. You know how to save it, and you know where it needs to go. You shouldn't have the government babysitting you. You shouldn't have people telling you what you can or cannot do, as long as you're not harming another person. And I think most of the times, most people would agree on that. Even if they're not a libertarian, most people just want to be able to live their own life and not have the government act as a babysitter. And most of the time, that them being a babysitter negatively impacts those people.
Yeah. Well, no, I absolutely hear you there. Um so what are some of your influences or maybe what were some of your earliest influences to the philosophy?
Probably just, I mean, philosophy wise, just Ludwig von Mises is probably a big one for me. Like
Yeah.
I have Austrian economics on my desk over there. I got Mark Carney to sign it when he came to Calgary, even though he told me it was a wasted piece of literature to be reading. Though he was beefing me when he came to Calgary, though.
Did he really
But
tell you that?
no, hold on, let's see if I get a photo of it. But yeah, no, he was like, oh yeah, I got him to sign it too, and he was just like, don't read everything you, or don't believe everything you read in this book. Hold on.
Yeah, well, he probably
What a
knows
guy.
he understands how dangerous these things are, I guess. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mises, of course, is one of the greatest, yeah, for sure. So have you, do you like what else though? Like what else do you read? What else do you recommend?
I mean, Rothbard's also pretty good as like someone who's more of like an anarcho-capitalist. I would say Rothbard is also pretty good. I've
Yeah.
been also following a lot of like the more like modern guys as well too. Like we have like obviously Javier Milei in Argentina. I agree with quite a lot what he's doing down there. I think he's helped out Argentina quite a bit. I wish someone not here in Canada would be able to do that, but
Yeah.
you know. And honestly, Thomas Massey in the States has been pretty good as well too. I know he's not a full libertarian; he's still a bit of a Republican, but honestly, it's better than nothing, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, yeah, he takes a lot of heat, Thomas Massey, but he's generally right about things. Yeah, on the subject of Rothbard, I noticed, and I mentioned this to you before, you have the in like a it's what would you call it? Like a Canadian, it's a Canadian flag that's also an anarcho-capitalist flag,
Yeah.
and I
On my
actually
Twitter.
had yeah, I had that as my banner on Twitter for on my old account that I lost years ago, but yeah, like tell me about that. Do you like I used to shy away from the term anarcho-capitalism. Well, the term anarchist in particular.
Oh
I
yeah.
certainly don't anymore. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm an anarchist, anarcho-capitalist in pretty much all my philosophy points. I mean, I was talking to Darcy a little bit earlier about this, but I'm more of a classic liberal in some angles. Where if we're gonna get our tax money taken from us, if the government's gonna reach into our pocket and steal all of our loose change and then some, we deserve those services after the fact. I don't want that money to just sit and be wasted. If they're gonna steal our money from us, I want the services that they promise us, whether that be healthcare, roads, any of that type of stuff. I demand it. As long as we're getting taxes taken from us, we need those services. And if we're not getting those services, you best bet we better be getting our taxes taken away.
Mhm.
So, but purely on that subject, everything else like a pure anarcho-capitalist. The only problem is, especially with this campaign, not many people in the writing know about anarcho-capitalism, and that's an unfortunate thing. I've had some people where even I mentioned libertarian, and they think that it means liberal. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
half the battle of this campaign is just trying to educate people on the ideas of libertarianism, and once they hear it, they're like, I'm on board. You sold me, kid."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're in a good like rural Alberta is a great riding for the type of or great ridings. I mean, you and yours in particular too for the type of ideas you're trying to promote for sure. Um, and then do you have so then of the people who do understand, you know, the the ideas of limited government and free markets and that sort of thing. Do you have you ran into anybody in your riding who is staunchly opposed to libertarianism in that sense?
I think not really. There have been some people
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
obviously like very like strong Pierre Polyev supporters. Like I've had some people tell me to like f off when going to their
yeah,
door because they're like, "You're a vote splitter. You're destroying democracy or whatever." But mostly, honestly, most people that are open minded to a conversation, they are on board with it. I think I have a couple of NDP supporters that are in the riding. They're like, it sounds good. Like I want more freedom, but like I'm an education worker and I don't want funds to be taken away from like my job or something. Like we have a lot of teachers that are in the riding too. So
yeah.
the battle is also trying to explain to them maybe not necessarily why private education would be better, but also where we can have a mixed system perhaps. So that's also half the
Right.
battle.
Yeah, for sure. Or at least introduce some level of competition
Yeah.
into the system, right? I mean, are there many charter schools in your riding?
I don't think so. Most people are
No,
either
yeah.
they either go to public school in Drumheller or like any of the major cities, or they're homeschooled.
Right. Okay. Well, homeschool. There you go. I mean, homeschooling. I mean, that's if there's a libertarian idea that's on the ticket, it's right there, right?
Yeah.
Um, for sure. Um, so I guess I'm curious though. Like, do you or do, have you run into misconceptions about libertarianism or about the Libertarian Party?
No, I like I said,
No.
the only
Okay.
two main misconceptions are number one, when you say lib, you have to be
Yeah.
very quickly when you're talking because there's some people they think lib, they may no, you're liberal, you're liberal, you're here with Mark Carney. Like, no, we're not here, I swear.
Yeah.
And the other part is they think that we're part of like the longest ballot committee, that we're trying to like split the vote or just trying to be like grifters. We have to
Right.
explain to people that yes, we are a party with no seats, but we are a serious party and we're actually trying to bring your voice to the federal government on your behalf. So those are the
Yeah.
two misconceptions. And usually if as long as they're willing to hear you out, usually you can have a pretty good conversation with most people. But if you're not quick, if you're not right on the money, you some people just slam the door right in your face.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, the Libertarian Party's been around for
We've actually before
over
the
40
conservatives.
years,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, before this current incarnation of the conservatives existed. And I think that's been their story in every election, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
you have to even explain to them what you're doing there. You know what I mean? But before they even take a look at what the name says. Um so again, when I first met you, you were involved with Students for Liberty. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about that?
All right. So there's two major things that are there with Students for Liberty with me, and I think one of them is probably bigger than the other. One of them is I am the director of an organization called the Liberty Pact or Student Pact, depending on who you're talking to, which is a large libertarian coalition here in Calgary with a whole bunch of different student organizations. This is with Students for Liberty, Generation Screwed, my organization, the Every Citizen a King Society. In our MRU and U of C, there's a couple of libertarian societies and liberal societies, and we basically all work together as like a coalition, like sharing resources, sharing like information, emails, all that type of stuff, to be able to bring things forward, whether that be protests, uh, pamphlets, signatures on things. Like we have like petitions that we put out, or events. We host rallies. We get about 150 people on average in some of these events. Sometimes they can get pretty small, like we have 20 people, but our biggest one has been about 500 people so far, which isn't big, but for a libertarian organization is pretty massive here in Calgary. But generally, I was the state director of Students for Liberty for not right now because I had to step down to be able to do this election because we're nonpartisan. But the general idea is to promote libertarianism, promote the idea of liberty, and promote the ideas of freedom of speech on college campuses and on the streets of cities.
Yeah, right on. Uh, um, yeah, Students for Liberty. I'm just trying to remember. Were Was it Students for Liberty that was originally called Students for Ron Paul?
That was
Was that
Americans for Liberty.
Americans for Liberty?
Yeah,
Okay, okay,
they're a
okay, okay.
partner organization. They're kind of like us as well too, but
Right.
American. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. I get those mixed up sometimes. Um, so your experience, say, with Students for Liberty or some of these other organizations, how has that influenced your approach to, libertarian advocacy?
no. Honestly, it's made it a lot more Big Ten for me. I would say because I know a lot of libertarians. They're very shut off. They're very like we should gatekeep libertarianism with a lot of stents. But
Is
my
that
approach.
is that a shot at me?
No, no, I swear, man, I swear.
No, I'm joking.
No. But a lot of people are willing to hear you out if you give them if you're willing to talk to them and you're
Yeah.
willing to debate them. And surprisingly, a lot of people are willing to switch. And so a lot of stuff what I've done, especially with my organization, the Every Citizen a King Society on our campus, is to be more Big Tent. We invite people that usually might completely disagree with libertarianism on everything, and we invite them onto panels, debates, and we want to challenge their philosophy down to the core on how can you defend this, how can you support this, or is there middle ground that we can make between the two? And I think working with Students for Liberty has made me a bit more open tent in that regard, where I'm more accepting to debate and also include others that are not libertarian or organizations. But generally, it's been pretty successful. Like, you'd be
Hmm.
surprised. Like, we've had some people who were previous NDP voters become libertarians in one event where we just debate philosophy for like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. That's very cool. On the gatekeeping comment, I will say that I do.
Wasn't targeted to you, promise.
Yeah, I know, but for some of the people, especially in the party that know me, I do. Um, Look, I want and I know you a little bit, and I've followed you for a while. So I mean, I'm glad you're running in this election. Uh, I do to some degree believe in gatekeeping who's a spokesperson for our movement, and I don't even mean that as a political party. Like, I'm not active in the Libertarian Party, but if they're going to use that word, there are some criteria that they have to meet before they pass the sniff test with me, and that is, some of the literature that we talked about, like Mises and Rothbard and
Yeah.
things like that. They have to understand this on a kind of fundamental level, and so there's
So let,
things I disagree. Go
so let
ahead.
me ask you a question then. How do you
Yeah.
feel that I used to work with the Conservative Party, Canada?
Well, I feel fine about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? And I don't. Again, my like I said, even because I don't consider the being a member of the Libertarian Party the litmus test for being a libertarian, to be honest. I mean, I want like Jacques been a great leader, Tim Moen was a great leader, you know what I mean? Those guys are really, they're well spoken and they present well and they know the philosophy in a way that like compare our two guys to the libertarian presidential candidates in the states. Every single one of them, and our guys beat them hands down. So Canada gets a bad rap for like being a police state or whatever, but our libertarian leaders are still better than theirs. So
Oh yeah.
but, so no, as far as you being working with the Conservative Party, I mean, I've been a member of the Conservative Party. I have lots of, I've worked with conservative MPs. I worked for Max Bernier. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a
Interesting
lot
guy.
of that stuff too. And you know what? I mean, again, there's it depends what your game is at the time. Are we talking about small incremental changes? I mean, and I've believed that was a good path forward in the past. These days, my goal is to really, I just want to discuss the hardcore anarcho-capitalist theory, and I want people, even when I'm talking to conservatives, and there's lots of conservatives who listen to this. I mean, the idea is that that is a guidepost, kind of a moral guidepost for us to measure policy against, right? Like, if the government wasn't involved here, what would the outcome be? You know what I mean? Or how would people act in this situation? So it's it's not like, I get we have a government, so we're like living in this state right now, right? So, and when I say state, I mean like we're living under a state, but we're also, the definition is also like you live in it's like a state that you're in, you know what I mean? It's like
We're stuck with.
that you're stuck with,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's like so so none of that bothers me. And but I will say I'm glad a young guy like yourself is, and getting some traction too,
Yeah.
right? Cuz I think you've been getting a little bit of traction here.
Surprisingly.
Um Surprisingly. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of your campaign priorities and the issues you've been focusing on as you've been door knocking and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So first one I would say, besides just obviously supporting my Every Citizen King ID, which is like supporting libertarianism, belief that you're in charge of your own life. The main ideas that I focused on are number one, ending supply management. As discussed earlier, we have a lot of farmers in this riding. We have a lot of young farmers in this riding that want to be able to buy land, get into the land industry, be able to start growing crops, be able to start ranching, be able to have cows, cattle, horses, or be able to produce poultry. And a lot of them are limited. They're limited because of this cartel system that we have here in Canada. And every single time I come to talk to one of these guys, they're like, "We're mad. We're mad that literally there's only other like besides me, there's only one other person that's against supply management on this campaign roster." And Pierre Poilievre, who is like pretty slotted to win this election, is completely against it. And if he does do that, he's condemning all of these young people who are wanting to ranch, be able to live on this land, possible bankruptcy, because he's not willing to listen to these people. He's not willing to go to their farms and hear them out. But I've heard so many of these stories. I've heard so many of these people near Stettler and near Drumheller, where there's people like this. And in Carbon, where towns are full of older people that just bought 10 acres of land just to, ride out the rest of their life, are also being forced off their land because they didn't think, oh, I need 100 acres of land just to be able to beat my retirement. And that's ridiculous. And considering that's a majority of the population of this riding live in farmland or live in rural Alberta, it's got to come to an end. It's got to come to an
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, and the reality is they're restricted on what they can produce here, so that we can watch dairy farmers in Quebec and Ontario put their stuff in a landfill
Oh yeah.
half the time, right? Like that's actually what's happening. So, subsidize them so they can dump milk and eggs into the garbage dump.
Well, there's a guy in
Um,
Emma that dumped like 800 liters of milk the other day. He was like, there was a news thing on it that he was like every single month he has to dump more than like 600 or 800 gallons of milk because he goes over the quota and he will get fined if he keeps it.
yeah. Why don't we let the price? Why don't we put it on the market and let the price drop a bit?
Yeah, and also yeah, also if we ignore the farmer aspect of it, like the people who actually
Yeah,
own the land, if we're talking
yeah,
about the regular everyday Joe, this is also increasing the cost of your groceries. You're paying more for milk because of this policy for no reason, because
yeah.
they're artificially increasing the scarcity of these goods. If you pay high prices for eggs, milk, any other type of poultry at all, you can thank supply management for that.
Oh, for sure. And the processes that go into it are so controlled. Like,
Yeah.
you wonder why, um, all these other countries have these incredible cheeses that we're just like Canadians are just not skilled enough to make something like that here. That's not the case. It's because there's all these extra processes and things that have to go into it that make producing like something like that illegal here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but, eh, okay, so what else is on your campaign, on your campaign platform?
I'll try to get through these a little bit faster, but supply
No,
management
no,
is a
don't
big
don't
one though.
don't rush though, we
Oh yeah.
got time.
Okay, because I do have a lot of policies. Like I
Okay,
spent the
let's do
I
it.
spent like no, you don't even understand, man. I spent the last like 3-4 months knocking on every single door that I could in this riding to
Yeah,
get to hear as many policy points from people as possible. And I have a massive list of what people want done this riding. So
let's
it
go
can go
through
pretty
them
big.
from the top down, and I'll
Yeah.
stop you when we got other things to talk about.
Well, number two on the list is obviously ending equalization. A lot of people are tired that they're paying additional taxes day to day that doesn't get put back to them. Like I was saying about the classic liberal angle of my policies, where if we are going to get taxed, we deserve to have that money back. And yet we are getting taxed, and some of that money doesn't ever come back to even the province that we're living in, that it stays out
Yeah.
east. And I think there was a study or something that was done recently where we've just hit about $90 billion that Alberta has just paid to Quebec alone since its inception.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money taken on a province that we haven't seen back. That's 90 CBCs right here that we're dealing with here that could have been
Yeah.
saved. And a lot of people are mad about that. I think that's a driving factor of what's pushing people to the independence movement or wanting to support a referendum as well too, because they're
For
tired
sure.
of it.
Sure. Let's come to the Alberta independence thing last, May, because I think all of these points likely tie into that. But
Oh yeah.
okay, so as somebody who studies political science, do you understand how the equalization program in Canada works? Like, do you know the mathematics of it?
I know the basic gist, but I can't tell you how it's advantaged or proposes an advantage to Alberta at all.
No, no, I don't. It certainly doesn't propose an advantage to Alberta, but I'm only asking because I actually don't know. I know that it's based on like a standard of living kind of
Yeah.
quotient and income, and they try and level the field. But that's all I understand about it.
I was gonna ask if you could correct me with this, but this is basically what I know. From what I know is this: every single year, the federal government makes a list of all the provinces, whether with their GDP, how much they produce in a year, how much revenue they've collected in taxes every single year, and that money is supposed to get redistributed fairly to the provinces that don't make as much, like PEI is an example.
Yeah,
However, they kind of just tweak it where it really isn't based on any factors, and the money can go to Quebec, can go to Ontario. There was a really weird part where 2 billion went to Manitoba this year for some reason. So like
hmm,
it can go anywhere, but things like Alberta is an example where our tax money that is paid, whether it be your income taxes or your sales taxes when you go to the store, gets taken away from those businesses, gets taken away from you, and gets purposely put in a budget where that money is not going to be sent here.
right,
A
right.
select amount of that money is not going to be sent here.
Yeah,
And it keeps increasing every single year, depending, especially with us making more money, we get less money back.
yeah. Well, I think what it also does is it kind of so you will notice. I mean, from an outsider looking in, like it always seems to be these more socialist leaning provinces that collect more of the equalization payments.
Yeah.
And so why is that? Well, it's probably because they're not run as efficiently. So they're not making as much money. People's standard of living is dropping. They're trying to transfer money there so that the people can maintain infrastructure and things like that
Yeah.
equally across the country. But the reality is, like, then these places have no the incentive to run your province efficiently disappears because you're gonna wanna make less money so you can tap into some of that equalization welfare. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's pretty obvious just looking at it from a high level that that's what happens, right?
Yeah, but even in some socialist provinces out get west here, like we have British Columbia, my home province, and they pay billions of dollars into the program as well too. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that now. A lot of people are starting to be pushed away from the New Democrats because of that exact reason. Like any of the socialized governments, they're not making as much money anymore, and they're still getting taxed just as much as
Oh,
here we
yeah.
are here in Alberta.
Yeah. Well, BC's definitely been on a decline for a long time.
I could tell you that.
I'm a economic refugee from BC myself, so, but a proud Albertan these days. Um, okay, next one. What's your next platform item?
Well, just supporting the free market in general. I've talked to a lot of people here in Drumheller and Stettler specifically, where I'd say the Canadian economy isn't struggling because we're lacking resources, we're lacking talent. The market's failing. Like no, most of the time the market is failing here in this riding because of overextended government. I have a lot of people, specifically in Drumheller, where they own side businesses. They rely on tourism to support their business. Well, there's a lot of unique people that work there, whether it be businesses that like make statues, make art, hairdressing, and that type of stuff. And the problem is, a lot of the time, the government tries to meddle into their businesses, just like how they meddled with ranchers back where I used to live, try to control their businesses, whether to try to take more money from them with taxes or try to do what's best for them. And I met a lady, a lovely lady just the other day named Darlene, who works in hairdressing. And the problem is you have two problems that she was working with as a business owner. And number one was the provincial and municipal government trying to regulate the roadways. Funny enough, and she owns a like a parking lot in front of her store, and the provincial and municipal government has been trying to basically get rid of that parking lot to extend the road to be a bit bigger. The problem is she has a like a hairdressing business on the side of a road where according to her, most of her customers are people who are obese or people who cannot drive a car. And if or not sorry, not drive a car, but can't walk, can't bike, can't scooter there. And if they can't get a car to her business, then she's going to go out of business. And a lot of people have felt that problem where the municipal and provincial governments have been neglecting not only their roads, but also trying to change a lot of the road laws that force people from being able to be street vendors. And number two, a lot of these businesses are also living paycheck to paycheck. Some of these businesses don't make enough money to even pay their staff at the end of each month. They've had to lay off a lot of people because of it. And every single month or every single year, their taxes go up and up. And if even 1% of their taxes go up, or if they get hit with a big fine at the end of the month, they're going to have to go out of business. I think there was a guy, there was a tattoo artist that I met. He was like right next to the convention center in Drumheller, where he was like, if the taxes go up even $500 a month, I'm moving out of this town. And that's
Mm.
forcing entrepreneurship. That's forcing businesses. That's forcing people who want to make make a living in these towns and in this riding back out here to the city, because if they live in these smaller towns, they can't make a profit to survive. And that also
Mm.
affects the workers who are wanting to live there, because there's going to be no jobs to work at anymore.
Yeah. So how does this tie to like federal jurisdiction?
A lot of it is because of taxation, I would say. Like, there's obviously a lot of stuff municipally and provincially that I would fight regardless of it being
Yeah.
a federal jurisdiction or not. But a lot
Yeah.
of it also comes from federal taxes. A lot of people are sick and tired of the high corporate taxes, and also the crumbling infrastructure related to the municipal government. A lot of these municipal governments can't afford to be able to repair their infrastructure and be able to repair their roads. And the federal government offers them grants every single year to be able to refurbish these roads. And they pay their taxes. They should get better roads. But
Yeah.
those grants never come. You have some areas like here in Drumheller, and I was just in another town called Acme the other day, where they haven't seen federal funding for road development in over 60 years. But yet they keep getting promised
Right.
every single year. It's coming. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the times it's either we got to pick a side. Either we got to stop promising these people grants every single year and let them keep the money that they earn so they can repair it on their own angles, or we got to actually get down to brass tacks and actually take this shit seriously.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. It ties right back into what you're saying about equalization. If we're sending all this money to Ottawa,
Yeah.
whatever in whatever form, it's going to Ottawa, and we're not getting anything back for it. I mean, that's that's a big problem, and that's exactly what it sounds like is happening
Yeah.
because these municipal governments, there is a threshold of there's only so much money available once Ottawa steals, X amount and you can't, there's only so much a municipal or a provincial government can do at that point, right?
Yeah. But with that,
Yeah.
I would fight to end corporate welfare, fight to end red tape. Obviously, taxes, we're going to be fighting that as much as we can. Equalization, all of that stuff will be fought. And also just letting people run their own businesses. There's been people that have been saying as well too. Mark Harney's dangerous wording on the United States has also affected businesses as well too, because a lot of these people, they run a
Mhm.
tourism business here in Drumheller. And if the the relationship with the states is hammered or hurt, people aren't going to come to here to Drumheller anymore, and then that also hurts businesses. That hurts the local people that rely on that tourism industry every single year as well too. So I would also support amending of our relationships with both our European and American partners as well too.
Right, right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like again, getting back to your thing about every citizen is a king, a sovereign individual. So much of these decisions that they're making, especially when it comes to things like trade and these relationships deteriorating with, we talk about it like it's Canada as a whole versus the United States as a whole on these trade things and the relationship disintegrating. It's really idiots in Washington and idiots in Ottawa getting in the way of guys like you and me buying and selling stuff with
Yeah,
people in a jurisdiction outside of, Ottawa's tax control. That's all it is, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, yeah, they just need to get out of the way and let individuals make those decisions, I think. Um, let's see. Okay, let's do one more. Give me one more before we and actually I'm gonna ask you this. Do you
sure.
Is immigration still a big thing? Do you get a lot of questions about immigration and your
Yeah.
immigration stance?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Most of those I usually like to tie into my part of like supporting like Alberta independence, because there's a question on
Right.
that. That's it. But most people are pretty tame about it, I would say.
Okay. Let's talk about Alberta independence
Yeah.
and where you stand on that. I
Sure.
imagine if your stance is too strong at the door, you're gonna get some mixed
Yes.
reviews. Okay, let's hear about your experience.
Listen, I'm not on this platform to tell people how they should live their lives, okay? I've seen a lot of people champion the idea of Albertan independence. And if we're actually going to go down this road and support a referendum, I entirely think that it should be people driven. I don't think a party should drive this independence movement. I don't think an individual should run this independence movement. I'm on here just saying we should have a referendum next year. And a lot of people are like, okay, why should we have a referendum, Michael? And this can go and this can point into both sides here, whether they're for independence or they're against independence. Because a lot of people, whether it be against it or for it, say that their side is the majority. They say that they, whether it be the independence people thinking that it's 80% of the population are for independence, or if it's more people on like the NDP side who believe that we should stay in Canada. We believe in confederation. We want to give it a fair chance. I think we should have the right to self-determination here in Alberta, that if we do want to stay in Canada, it should be made with confidence. If people are saying we have 80% plus people that are in favor of staying in confederation, let's prove it. Let's take it to a referendum next year. If we're wanting to leave, if we're actually being taken advantage of as much as most people say we are, then let's also put it to referendum on whether or not we want to chart our own path. And most people, they get more convinced on the issue. Like, hey, you're right. The best way to shut up the independence movement is to show it that people don't want to be independent. But at the same time, the best way to fight back against the federal government and say, hey, we feel like we're being mistreated, is to also say we might want to be able to leave. We might want to have our own future. And I always say I think we should get a referendum vote next year and try to get as close to 50% as possible. Because even if we don't leave Confederation, if you saw what happened with Quebec when they did their little referendum and they got like what 49%, people started taking Quebec a lot more seriously in Confederation when that happened. They got a lot better deals. And I think in Alberta, even if we don't leave, we need to be able to get as close to that number as possible. Because people will start taking Alberta seriously, that we're being taken advantage of. Equalization is hurting hurting the average everyday person. Supply management is hurting the people who are, producing our food and buying the food. And you got to start treating us fairly, or else look what's gonna happen.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's good. That's good messaging, I think. For especially for when you're door knocking. Is that actually where you stand on the issue?
I'd say I generally stand on that issue as well too. I mean, I obviously don't want a federal government. Like I'm an anarcho-capitalist. If it was up to me, I wouldn't want a government. So if you're trying to tell me, oh my goodness, guys, we can vote on getting rid of the federal government next year, I mean, I'm all for it. So you got to convince me on that angle. But most people, you still got to start at the bare bones.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, I'll let I'll give you my opinion on some of that too. I mean, I
Sure.
think that I would be a separatist in any province I lived in. And I'm from
Yeah.
BC. I think BC should separate. I fully support Quebec independence. I think that the Confederation is totally dysfunctional. Where it was originally designed for. I shouldn't say that. Alberta doesn't fall into this category. Alberta was kind of colonized from the original Confederation, if we're
Yeah.
being honest,
We
right?
didn't we didn't
And
we only joined in 1905, I believe, as a
well,
province.
we didn't even
Yeah.
join.
Right.
We were a colony of central Canada, and they created a province with very little input from people in Alberta at the time.
Yep.
And, BC joined. BC was something different. They joined voluntarily, shortly after Confederation, but and Newfoundland obviously much later joined
Yeah.
Confederation. So I mean there is a precedent there that, if the original 4 joined voluntarily and BC joined voluntarily later and Newfoundland later after that, they should be able to leave voluntarily also, and I think that same
Yeah.
precedent applies to us, but,
Especially
um
because of that reason that we were involuntarily joined Confederation. Like
well, for sure,
they
yeah,
created
for
us.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem I have with the using referendum as leverage to get a better deal is it still gives too much authority to a central government, basically. I mean, it's like, look, we're threatening to leave. You guys still have all the power over us. We just want we just want you to give us a little. We
Yeah.
just want you to give us more. Basically, that's what we're asking, or take
Yeah.
away less, or whatever. But the authority still stays in Ottawa, and I
Yeah.
think that's like my approach is that the exercise of secession should be like decentralization,
Yeah.
and even if Canada were to still exist, but they were to, you know, if it was a fully decentralized system where the where Ottawa was subordinate to um, the provinces, that would be different, right? I mean, but it
Now,
just
but
seems to me,
let me raise an interesting question now, because
sure.
as libertarians, we like to focus on like Mark Carney, we focus on the seat in Parliament in Ottawa. But now the question becomes a cultural issue. And I know if this has become a very big issue as of late with libertarians, where is secession considered treason to the monarchy as well too? And I know there's a lot of libertarians, especially, and a lot of people in this writing that are both half Republican
Hmm.
and half monarchist. So besides trying to shrink down the government, do we stay loyal to the monarchy as well too, or do we try to stay with them? So those are also
If you
questions that
want
are
to.
brought up. Those are also questions that are brought up.
Well, again, I guess my so if it's a question to me, my answer is these are questions for individuals. I mean,
Yeah,
your allegiance to a monarchy these days is similar to like an allegiance to yeah, any type of cultural anchor, right?
yeah,
Which might be church, it might be anything that kind of ties you to a cultural framework that you identify with, and I think that those are questions for individuals. I don't think that's a question we want the government deciding for us, right?
100%.
Um, and
But that's what I'm saying. Most people believe that if we leave Confederation and don't try to fight for like the libertarian monarchist value, like I don't know. I've talked to Keegan a lot. This is an interesting guy to talk to about this. But if we leave Confederation, then do we have that same values anymore? Are we still able to still support the monarchy in that angle?
well, like I say, I mean, I get you, but it's the if you're are we talking about this individually or collectively? Because I
Yeah,
think I that's where it really comes down to is the province of Alberta, and again, to me, that's the next big hurdle
yeah,
in this thing is like once so we separate from Canada, we don't want to centralize all that same authority back into Edmonton. You know what I
yeah.
mean? We don't
No,
want because
100%.
it turns into the exact same thing. You have people in Fort Mac and Grand Prairie subsidizing, the lifestyle of these bureaucrats in Edmonton,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what we're trying to get away from. So, um, as far as where that's kind of where we need to the thing is to if Alberta were to separate, you want to draw the right conclusions from the
yeah.
mistakes of Confederation, which is that this central authority doesn't work. So we need a very decentralized system here, or else we're going to run into the exact same type of despotism that we're involved in right now. It'll just have a more Alberta flavor
Yeah.
than an
So then
Eastern Canadian
So
flavor.
then after our Alberta referendum, we should also here in Calgary have a referendum on whether or not we want to stay in Alberta.
Yeah, to turn it into a completely privatized city state, and I'm not even joking when I say that.
And
I mean,
Capistan for out
and
Calgary 2029, bro.
yeah, exactly. I mean, look, if you live here, if you're a property owner or you have some title due to a rental agreement even or however that works, I mean, there's a level of ownership that is implied with your residency, right? And I would
Yeah.
like to see that ownership actually be realized in a sense. So that might be too much for your voters
No,
in
I know. This is an interesting
and
conversation to have, though.
yeah,
Interesting conversation because a lot of libertarians, like people who are like not just the voters, but the people who believe in our party and believe in our ideology, they ask those questions, and those are very
yeah.
important questions that need answering as well too. Because does the independence movement just stop at Alberta, or do we keep going until we get to just your property? Like, how
Yeah.
far do we keep going? So I would say, yeah, as an anarcho-capitalist, I would fight that far. But at bare minimum for this campaign, I am for Albertan autonomy. I will be supporting a referendum come next year.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess there was another question I might have overlooked, the subject of treason. Now,
Yeah,
treason is a legislative law. I
yeah,
mean, it's a law created by governments. It's not something that, we would identify with being either morally right or wrong. The morality would come from the circumstances of it, but as far as it being illegal or them being able to punish you for it. I mean, it is it is strictly a blanket legislative law or whatever they call like positive law, I think, right? Where they would I mean, it has no tie to any again cultural or moral well, especially it has no tie to a moral foundation at all.
no,
Like it's just like you don't like the government, well, we're going to throw you in prison for it. And so to me, I don't take questions about treason too seriously, to be honest.
yeah.
For that reason, right?
Yeah, because it
Okay.
also it also hurts the self-determination movement as well
Well,
too. Like,
exactly.
if we believe
Yeah.
people should be able to chart their own life and control what's around them, they should be allowed to have those discussions without being labeled. You're a separatist.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're committing treason. Like, no, let people have conversations on this issue. If they want to stay in
Yeah, or
Canada, then we can. But if
yeah,
we don't,
for
we
sure.
don't.
And go ahead and say we're committing treason. I just don't know what like I don't really care. Like to me that term is I don't have an allegiance to Ottawa is all I'm getting at. Like
Yeah,
that's not where my allegiance is to the
no,
my family and the people around me. You know what I mean? My community. You know, and it and that's where it is. So um, let's talk quickly about Pierre Poilievre. Now,
yes,
obviously, he's kind of I was a little surprised that they even stuck with this guy.
yes,
He lost his own seat, and I know there's going to be a lot of defense from Polyev supporters that are saying, well, they redrew the lines, they had that big phony list of people on the ballot or whatever, and
they're
and
coming
I'm
here
like,
too.
yeah, they probably are, but you
No,
know
they
what?
are. They just today
Yeah,
they added 50 new names to our ballot right now.
yeah. Well, perfect. But they did that in Justin Trudeau's riding when he was
Yeah,
riding too, right? Or when he was running too. So I don't like. And as far as redrawing the lines, I know that this happens. They redraw the lines to for political control. The Conservative Party was guilty of it in the past too. So I mean, these are how you play political games. And he knew running as the leader in that riding that was the case before. I think he was
about that.
I think he thought he was a lock given he had been there for so long, and now he's kinda, he lost, and then he completely turns his back on that riding. He's, like, trash talking them now. I don't,
Oh yeah,
you know, so I don't know how they take him seriously. I don't know how the
yeah.
Conservative Party still thinks this is their guy, I guess is
Well,
where I'm going.
l- let me tell you something. As someone who worked with the Conservatives, let me tell you a little bit about the Conservative angle of this. They are desperate right now. The party is kind of like a glass pane, as I always like to say. It's teetering and it's delicate, and this party is one bad move away from repeating like what happened in the 1940s with them splintering into a whole bunch of different parties.
Mm,
They are trying to support Pierre Poilievre because they have no one else. If he's gone,
mm,
if they kick him out here in January, the party has no one else to replace him. And what happens to that movement? What happens to the movement that they put everything on this guy, that say he was the man, he was going to go into parliament, he was going to represent us, and he lost? What happens when he's gone? So honestly, I understand completely why they're keeping around, because once he's gone, and if he doesn't win before he is gone, the party's in deep trouble. Like, you already see it right now, where I have conservative influencers backing my campaign now because they are sick and tired of Pierre Poilievre and his rhetoric. Like, people are so mad about him not supporting the ending of equalization and supply management here in Alberta. You have conservatives that are already jumping ship, and you have conservatives here in Alberta that supported the new Republican Party as well too. Like, that's already beginning here. And now we're just waiting for him to step down. Like, if once Pierre Poilievre's gone, it's game on at that point.
yeah. Yeah, I guess so, hey? Um, and then here's the other thing. So he's coming to Alberta because obviously,
Yeah,
he's guaranteed to win. He's not gonna run somewhere where he's gonna be challenged again. Um, so he's kinda taken, that's kinda he's and whatever. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, then he gets on there and it's like he's not really listening to Albertans
yeah,
either. He's like dismissive of the referendum, calling himself a Canadian patriot. It's like, where are you coming from? Are you that out of touch? Like showing up in this, especially in this riding, I think there's a
yeah,
pretty strong rural sentiment for independence.
yeah,
And when I say independence, I mean it in the political divorce sense, and I also mean it
yeah,
just in the individual sense. Like we just want government to get away from us, right?
yeah. And I mean, I think the worst part about this as well too is he's not even going to be the MP of the region. If we think extremely locally too as well, he plans on stepping down in 3 years. He wants to run in Carleton again for 2029. So he's not even wanting to be the
What?
permanent MP. Yeah, he said he's going to let Damien run again in 2029. So that means he's not even wanting to be the MP of this region again. He's only doing it just so he can get back into the House.
Boy,
So that also angers a lot of people as well too.
well, it just seems slimy.
Yeah,
It just seems like, not that we should expect much from those guys, but it just seems slimy. And I know there'll be I can understand why there's a lot of conservatives disappointed. And I will say this before we wrap it up. I think those conservative influencers that are supporting you right now are not just uh, are not just doing it, because they're dissatisfied with that guy. I think you've done a good job of articulating yourself, and you're a young guy, well spoken. I think you're doing a good job. So
yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
And any last words though?
Honestly, at the end of the day, this campaign is to bring smaller people's voice to light. I've had a lot of people, a lot of smaller towns where they feel like they're not being heard. The main idea of this campaign is want to hit every single door in the riding, get every single person's voice as possible. I'm collecting a list of every single name of every single person that I've talked to, and I want to bring their voices to the federal level. We have 3 debates coming up. We have one on the 29th, one on the 31st, and one on August 1st. And I'm going to be debating Pierre Poilievre, and I'm going to be bringing those voices that I've heard all across this riding straight to his face. So even if he does win this election, he's sure as hell going to have to represent us.
Yeah, yeah. Where are they?
One is in Camrose. I don't know how to say this second one because this one's in a really small town. It's in Torfield, I believe it is. Yeah, Torfield. And then the other one will be in Drumheller.
Okay, awesome. And then where do people follow you or contact you otherwise?
So the best way to get a hold of me or just to hear more of my platform is going to Michael Harris for MP.ca. Has all of my information there. You want to donate to the campaign, you want to volunteer, you want to learn a little bit more we'll learn a little bit more about my policies, get access to my social media, all right there. Or I'm primarily also more active on Twitter lately. So Mike M Harris for MP is also a good place to reach me at as well too. But yeah,
Okay. Awesome, Michael. Best of luck.
thank you.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for getting me out of my cave and inspiring me. It's been about 6 months since I've done an episode.
No,
So
we want to see more from you, man. I want to see more of these podcasts.
I don't come out of retirement for just anybody, so
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
that was Michael Harris, Libertarian candidate for the Battle-River Crowfoot by-election. You can check him out at Michael Harris for MP.ca. That's it for now. Thanks. See you later.